FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's January 29th, 2018. Well, if you've noticed over the weekend, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York State and several other Northeast states plan to sue the federal government. Well, before we start with that, as always, be part of the show. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll also send you our cryptocurrency white paper. I know it's come a little bit slow, but it will be going out to all of you. And getting back to the topic, so Cuomo doesn't like the impact of the tax reform measure upon New York's wealthy citizens. Never mind the fact that Schumer, who is New York's senior senator, and others could have negotiated with the Republicans and somewhat softened the phasing out of state and local tax deductions, but they chose not to. And they could have done it better. They perhaps could have gotten it up to $25,000, but they did nothing. And now Cuomo has the nerve to sue the federal government. Frank Vernuccio, policy expert, is with us now. You've heard him here before. Frank, welcome back.
Kerry, it's great to be with you again.
So, what of Cuomo's plans to sue the federal government because they cut taxes for 80 or 90% of the people, but raise them for 10%, most of whom live in high-tax blue states? Not all, but most.
Well, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are filing a lawsuit against the federal government. And Kerry, the big question is, somewhat humorously, they're all trying to figure out how to get this case moved to the Ninth Circuit in California to get their way. But they aim exactly as you described it, is against the federal government for limiting property tax deductions in the state. Interestingly enough, by the way, a lot of folks just this week might be getting their first paychecks of 2018 and finding out that cut in taxes is resulting in a higher paycheck because there's less federal taxes coming out of their income taxes. Well, in high tax states like New York, where property taxes are sky high, there is, of course, some pain involved. And the point of view of the Trump administration has been, well, states should not be imposing such high taxes in the first place. Governor Cuomo has always been a fan of a high regulation, high tax government. And now, along with the governors of New Jersey, Connecticut, and of course across the country in states like California, they're now paying the price in terms of the federal government no longer subsidizing high tax states. And that's where the battle lines are being drawn.
So basically, though, the court's ruled many times, the Supreme Court, that individuals have no property interest, if you will, proprietary interest in tax rates, meaning and taxes, meaning that if you're getting a tax cut or you're getting a tax break on something and the government decides to get rid of it, there's nothing you can do about it. And if you're getting taxed higher, if there's a penalty or whatever, again, too bad, but you have no property right in the existing tax structure.
Well, that's right. And I, in terms of looking at how this court case could shape up, it's kind of fascinating because the point of view that Governor Cuomo and the governors of New Jersey and Connecticut, and I guess eventually California as well, will try to take is that there is a direct relationship between the federal government and the individuals in terms of their subsequent relationship with the state governments and what they pay taxes on. That would actually constitute interference by the federal government with the state governments. And so I don't think the court, since it's not in the Ninth Circuit, is going to look favorably on that argument at all. It really is a notice to states that have really felt there is no limit on how much taxes they can impose on their citizenry, that perhaps that's coming to an end. The direct effect of high federal taxes that we've seen over the past decade and more, as combined with high state taxes in places like New York and Connecticut, Connecticut, New Jersey, and California has really been crushing not only on individuals, Kerry, but also on the entire economy. And I think that period has reached its high point or its low point, whatever way you want to look at it. And there's starting to be some significant pushback.
Hey, and you think about it, 80% of the country to 90%, depending upon whom you hear from, are enjoying a tax cut. So there's winners and losers in every tax reform measure that's ever been passed, isn't there?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Unfortunately or fortunately, however we want to look at it, that's absolutely true. In this case, though, I think it really is a clash of philosophy, and one of the most significant we've seen in terms of state philosophies of one state against the other. The low-tax states have been saying for decades that they are tired of subsidizing high-tax states in terms of more revenue coming from them because they have to, the overall tax rate is higher because they have to subsidize the high taxes that were being deducted from high-tax states like New York. That clash finally has reached a head, and this tax reform package really put the nail in that coffin of that particular issue. Will there be pushback? Well, there already is, based on what Governor Cuomo is doing. But I think politically this will continue. Interestingly enough, though, there's a political equation here that we can't overlook. The fact is those high-tax states, almost all of them are blue Democrat states, pretty badly lost the 2016 election. They lost the presidency, they lost the House of Representatives, they lost the Senate, or at least the Republicans kept control of those houses. And, you know, their elections, as President Obama said, do have consequences. And so those states, mostly red states, low-tax states, are now being able to push their view of what taxes should be like against the blue states, which had always favored high taxes.
In a perfect example, Frank, my new home state of Florida has roughly the same population as New York State, perhaps a little higher. You know, since it surpassed New York, over 20 million people here. The state budget of Florida is less than half that of New York State's budget. And trust me, there's plenty of inefficiency and corruption in Florida, but there's no income tax, and taxes are limited insofar as how much they can collect. So we don't have unions here. No, there's right-to-work laws, so you can't be forced in most cases to join a union in order to have a job. There are no public employee unions in Florida. And as a result, we have no WICS Act, which makes public projects in New York State double the cost of what they should be. As a result,
indeed,
Florida right now is rebuilding every major highway in the state in various places.
Well, I'm glad you brought that last point up, because one of the fascinating things I think that a lot of folks from high-tax states are saying is that, you know, it's one thing to pay high taxes and get a lot back for it, but high-tax states don't seem to be providing better services to their citizens. Now, part of the problem in states like New York are generous benefits, frankly, to folks who might not deserve them. And I know that sounds harsh and it sounds cruel, but let's face it, Governor Cuomo has made it, as has Governor Brown in California, has made it a real selling point of their administrations that they are giving very generous benefits to the extent possible to illegal immigrants. Now, we just saw Governor Cuomo in his State of the State address talk about how, regardless of what the federal government decides on the Dreamers, you know, the DACA people, he will continue to find ways to use state money to supply Medicaid benefits to the Dreamers. Those are, and as well as free in-state tuition or free tuition to state colleges. Those are the things I think that drive taxpayers kind of wild in places like New York and California. They are subsidizing folks who, in many cases, don't necessarily have a legal right to be in the state at all, let alone to derive benefits from that state.
That's a perfect example. They want to pay Medicaid for Dreamers who are here illegally, and then they can't figure out why they're going broke and why, you know, thousands of people a week are leaving New York, California, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey for greener pastures, whether it's Texas, Florida, Tennessee, New Hampshire, you name it. You name it. All the low-tax states. The only place people aren't moving to that might be considered low tax is Alaska or South Dakota for climate purposes, mainly because Global warming hasn't reached those states yet.
Unfortunately for them. But once again, you've put your finger on it. One of the things that you study in terms of the health of a state is its out-migration pattern. And states like New York and California, which for a good part of their existence had always been states that people migrated to, are now states that people are migrating out of. Now, the population drain in places like New York doesn't look as dramatic as it is in fact, because the New Yorkers who are leaving are those New Yorkers, basically middle-income, middle-class working New Yorkers, who have added to the state's economy. Their numbers, however, are being replaced by a lot of immigrants coming in, legal and illegal, who at least for a certain portion of their stay here, their initial portion of their stay here, will actually be draining state resources rather than adding to state resources. And that makes the economic climate of those states fairly problematical.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've seen it for many, many years. I've known dozens of people who have left the state, high-income earners, all of them, to flee the tax burden. And, that wasn't a primary reason why. These states are also the most intrusive in your personal life. They're always telling you what to do, what you can't do, regulatory-wise, for businesses. They're a nightmare. And then the tax burden that you're forced to pay for them to harass you is just icing on the cake, Frank.
You're absolutely right. During a period of after 9/11, Governor Pataki had asked me to take over part of the Workers' Compensation Board, and I had the opportunity to tour a good part of New York State on business. And I've got to tell you, there are parts of New York State which are resembling ghost towns, areas that used to be some of the most productive parts of the United States. People simply have picked up stakes and left. Businesses have decided they will not stand for the intrusion in their affairs, for the ridiculous regulations and the high taxes. They left, and eventually the workers left too. It's really a formula for the death of an state's economy, the way governors like Governor Cuomo in New York and Governor Brown in California have conducted their state affairs. Unfortunately, though, despite the clear evidence, budget shortfalls, increasing taxes, citizens leaving, it seems that governors like Cuomo and Brown are uneducable. They don't seem to be able to read the tea leaves and understand what's going on. They are addicted to a hard-left philosophy, which frankly is not grounded in any kind of economic reality.
Well, why let a little thing like economic reality get in the way of your far-left doctrine, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So New Yorkers going to wake up? Does it going to take a state crashing and burning in order for them to get religion here and understand what's happening?
Here's the problem with that, and you bring up a great point, but here's the problem, and it lies to some extent with the decision of the Republican Party to simply give up. A lot of elections in New York are not seriously contested, and I think the same in California as well, are not seriously contested by the Republican Party. There's an attitude of defeatism where the Republican Party doesn't go to pains to help raise funds, to groom good candidates, and to support good candidates when they decide to run for office. If you look at how the GOP committed resources in the last couple of presidential elections, they essentially, before the actual campaign even began, conceded states like New York and California to the Democrats by simply not providing enough funds or not enough expertise, and by not grooming candidates to run against the incumbent Democrats.
That is a great point, Frank. Hey, who's running the New York Republican Party? Cox, who is Nixon's son-in-law. Christopher Cox, I think his name is. No, not Chris Cox.
Ed Cox.
Ed Cox. So he's running it because look at New York City last election. Perfect example. Comrade de Blasio is universally reviled. Everyone hates him. In court, you got proof that his administration is completely corrupt and pay for play.
One of the most corrupt in decades, by the way. It's stunningly corrupt.
It's stunningly, staggeringly corrupt. And yet, the Republicans couldn't be bothered to run a viable candidate. They had Bo Dietl.
Well, let me jump in there for a second. I think that the candidate herself was a viable candidate. Malika Tikas was young, female, personable, well-spoken. Had she been given even a modicum of the resources she needed, she could have made the race very competitive. However, early on, I believe it apparently, considering the funding that she received, the Republicans decided it was a waste of money. And so she never really received the support that she needed. So the problem is not just finding a viable candidate. In many cases, there are enthusiastic people who want to run, but it's supporting those candidates. As a result, what happens in cities like New York and in parts of New York State as a whole, you get what, for want of a better term, you can call a vanity candidate. Basically, a very well-off millionaire, political novice, whose chief attribute as a candidate is that they are willing to self-finance their campaigns to the limited extent one person can finance a major political campaign. So without experienced candidates, without major dollars coming in, without the GOP fundraising machine, which, and let's face it, there's no such thing as a local election anymore. A lot of campaigns, as we're seeing right now, going towards the 2018 election, and the Democrat side, Democrats are targeting certain states and raising money throughout all 50 states for those states they targeted. The same thing is basically what the GOP should be doing in New York, but they've conceded New York, they've conceded California, and so they're not really taking the pains they need to take to make their candidates viable, even when they do get a decent candidate.
Yeah, you're so right. I don't think she was viable. She wasn't seasoned enough. You need somebody who's running against a corruptocrat such as Comrade de Blasio, who's got a record, who has some charisma, is better able to connect with the public, but she just, I don't think, had the ability to do it. I think she was basically a lightweight who just stepped up because nobody else would. And the results speak for themselves, Frank.
Yeah, I think also there's a certain amount, an air of unreality when you talk about running against de Blasio, in that here's a guy who has had a horrible first term, accomplished nothing, one corruption case after the other, a guy who has, in his career, cheered on the Soviet Union as they were putting troops aimed at the United States, basically, in Nicaragua. This is the governor of the great city of New York. And to think that the Republican Party would not make a major push to get this guy out, and to make that push, by the way, a national cause célèbre. The Republicans could have pointed to de Blasio and his failed administration and his corruption as a symbol of everything that was wrong with the Democrat Party. And yet they just chose not to do so. They chose not to make it a serious issue. And I think that's a shame on you, to the national as well as to the state Republican Party.
Yeah, because that one was definitely winnable, right? I mean, it definitely was. Everybody despises the comrade. They hate him. I mean,
yeah, including by the way, members, many people within the Democrat Party who snicker at the thought of him being mayor, but nevertheless, would rather die than pull down the lever for a GOP candidate, particularly in places like the west side of Manhattan and in certain trendy areas of Brooklyn in particular. Heaven forbid vote for a GOP candidate. But you couldn't have had a worse option for the Democrats than de Blasio, and yet, once again, the Democrats come together in a way that the Republicans never seem to be able to. Just look at what's going on right now. We have in the Republican Party ownership of the White House. The entire machinery of federal government belongs to the Republican Party at this point. If you recall, when that last occurred, during the first 2 years of the Obama administration, when the Democrats ran the federal government with equal totality, they were able to ram through a variety of major programs because they came together. The Republican Party knows that they're facing a big deadline in 2018. They might well do poorly in the 2018 elections. Not definite, but possibly. They should be taking this time to ram through their agenda with a spirit of unity, putting the more contentious stuff aside until some other time. But they don't come together to do it, and the country is the poorer for it.
Yeah. It's really pathetic, and it just shows that there's only really one party here, Frank, the Uniparty. That's all they care about is, the book coming out tomorrow by I can't remember his name, Secret Empires, Schweitzer, same guy who did Clinton Cash and so many others, will prove the exact point that there's only one party, uniparty, and for the most part, all they care about is taking care of their own.
Yeah, the eternal mystery of how a middle-class congressman spends 2 terms in office and somehow emerges a multimillionaire. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, or like Maxine Waters, a person who knows absolutely nothing about anything. She is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. Don't you find that entertaining?
Entertaining is an interesting word. I'm not going to do to Ms. Waters what the Democrats tried to do unsuccessfully to Donald Trump, but just from my layman's perspective, I find it more likely that Ms. Waters or Congresswoman Waters is more likely to wind up on a psychiatrist's couch than on Millionaire's Row, but Millionaire's Row is indeed where she wound up.
Well, maybe it's not too far from a psychiatrist's couch as well. I mean, the woman is a lunatic. I remember the time she was talking something about Wall Street, and she was complaining about Solomon Smith Barney Frank, and the woman is a joke. She is a complete joke. I believe
she's also the one who said that she was worried that if North Korea nukes the United States, that Trump would get us into a war.
Yeah, yeah. She's just a gaffe a minute. She could give Joe Biden a run for the money for being the gaffmeister extraordinaire. But, somehow they take this lady seriously. She lives in a $4 million mansion, but she's always been a public servant. And she was rated at one time the 4th most corrupt member of Congress. I don't know if she's moved up or down on the list.
And that's pretty stiff competition.
Yeah. I mean, you got some world-class Ganephs there, right? I mean, you got some major criminals who are competing for that title. So what's going to happen? Because you know that they're going to lose that lawsuit, New York State. They will lose that lawsuit, and they're going to be stuck with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, one would assume that a responsible elected official would, rather than engage in public relations activities like this, would try to do what's best for the state and try to make some profit and try to reform the finances of the state. Look, if you take an analysis of the 20-year budget of the state government and you see how state and actually even city budgets in New York have skyrocketed over that period of time, without any real additional services being given to the people, you'd have to think that they would be smart enough to understand something is wrong here. We're getting more and more money, and we're accomplishing less and less for our citizenry. Let's do something differently. Instead, they continue on their path, and let's be blunt. In a lot of cases, particularly with Governor Cuomo, and in fact with Mayor de Blasio as well, both of them care, and I'll be very blunt in saying this, next to nothing about the success of their state, because both of them have their eyes on something else entirely. In Governor Cuomo's case, it's the White House. In Governor de Blasio, and in Mayor de Blasio's case, well, I think he's trying to look at national office as well.
Yeah,
and so you have this strange situation where the people who are supposedly the most responsible for protecting their state or their city are pretty much just using it as a footstool to the next level.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And the thought that Comrade de Blasio could actually think that somehow he is fit for national office, or more importantly, that he is somehow electable, is one of the delusional tales of our time. But we'll leave it at that. Frank, if we want to find out more about you, where's the best place to go on the web?
USAGovpolicy.com. That's USAGovpolicy.com.
All right. And we'll have a link to it in the show notes. As always, questions, comments, email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, and the Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. Frank, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Kerry, I look forward to our next discussion.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next. FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's January 29th, 2018. Well, if you've noticed over the weekend, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York State and several other Northeast states plan to sue the federal government. Well, before we start with that, as always, be part of the show. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll also send you our cryptocurrency white paper. I know it's come a little bit slow, but it will be going out to all of you. And getting back to the topic, so Cuomo doesn't like the impact of the tax reform measure upon New York's wealthy citizens. Never mind the fact that Schumer, who is New York's senior senator, and others could have negotiated with the Republicans and somewhat softened the phasing out of state and local tax deductions, but they chose not to. And they could have done it better. They perhaps could have gotten it up to $25,000, but they did nothing. And now Cuomo has the nerve to sue the federal government. Frank Vernuccio, policy expert.
Direct effect of high federal taxes that we've seen over the past decade and more, as combined with high state taxes in places like New York and Connecticut, New Jersey, and California, has really been crushing not only on individuals, Kerry, but also on the entire economy. And I think that period has reached its high point or its low point, whatever way you want to look at it. And there's starting to be some significant pushback.
Hey, and you think about it, 80% of the country to 90%, depending upon whom you hear from, are enjoying a tax cut. So there's winners and losers in every tax reform measure that's ever been passed, isn't there?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Unfortunately or fortunately, however we want to look at it, that's absolutely true. In this case, though, I think it really is a clash of philosophy, and one of the most significant we've seen in terms of state philosophies of one state against the other. The low-tax states have been saying for decades that they are tired of subsidizing high-tax states in terms of more revenue coming from them because they have to, the overall tax rate is higher because they have to subsidize the high taxes that were being deducted from high-tax states like New York. That clash finally has reached a head, and this tax reform package really put the nail in that coffin of that particular issue. Will there be pushback? Well, there already is, based on what Governor Cuomo is doing. But I think politically this will continue. Interestingly enough, though, the government no longer subsidizing high-tax states, and that's where the battle lines are being drawn.
So basically, though, the court's ruled many times, the Supreme Court, that individuals have no property interest, if you will, proprietary interest in tax rates, meaning and taxes, meaning that if you're getting a tax cut or you're getting a tax break on something and the government decides to get rid of it, there's nothing you can do about it. And if you're getting taxed higher, if there's a penalty or whatever, again, too bad, but you have no property right in the existing tax structure.
Well, that's right. And I, in terms of looking at how this court case could shape up, it's kind of fascinating because the point of view that Governor Cuomo and the governors of New Jersey and Connecticut, and I guess eventually California as well, will try to take is that there is a direct relationship between the federal government and the individuals in terms of their subsequent relationship with the state governments and what they pay taxes on. That would actually constitute interference by the federal government with the state governments. And so I don't think the court, since this is not in the Ninth Circuit, is going to look favorably on that argument at all. It really is a notice to states that have really felt there is no limit on how much taxes they can impose on their citizenry, that perhaps that's coming to an end.
Is with us now. You've heard him here before. Frank, welcome back.
Kerry, it's great to be with you again.
So, what of Cuomo's plans to sue the federal government because they cut taxes for 80 or 90% of the people, but raise them for 10%, most of whom live in high-tax blue states? Not all, but most.
Well, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are filing a lawsuit against the federal government. And Kerry, the big question is, somewhat humorously, they're all trying to figure out how to get this case moved to the Ninth Circuit in California to get their way. But the aim, exactly as you described it, is against the federal government for limiting property tax deductions in the state. Interestingly enough, by the way, a lot of folks just this week might be getting their first paychecks of 2018 and finding out that that cut in taxes is resulting in a higher paycheck because there's less federal taxes coming out of their income taxes. Well, in high tax states like New York, where property taxes are sky high, there is, of course, some pain involved. And the point of view of the Trump administration has been, well, states should not be imposing such high taxes in the first place. Governor Cuomo has always been a fan of a high regulation, high tax government. And now, along with the governors of New Jersey, Connecticut, and of course across the country in states like California, they're now paying the price in terms of the federal government. There's a political equation here that we can't overlook. The fact is, those high tax states, almost all of them are blue Democrat states, pretty badly lost the 2016 election. They lost the presidency, they lost the House of Representatives, they lost the Senate, or at least the Republicans kept control of those houses. And, you know, their elections, as President Obama said, do have consequences. And so those states, mostly red states, low tax states, are now being able to push their view of what taxes should be like against the blue states, which had always favored high taxes.
In a perfect example, Frank, my new home state of Florida has roughly the same population as New York State, perhaps a little higher. You know, since it surpassed New York, over 20 million people here. The state budget of Florida is less than half that of New York State's budget. And trust me, there's plenty of inefficiency and corruption in Florida, but there's no income tax, and taxes are limited insofar as how much they can collect. So we don't have unions here. No, there's right-to-work laws, so you can't be forced in most cases to join a union in order to have a job. There are no public employee unions in Florida. And as a result, we have no WICS Act, which makes public projects in New York State double the cost of what they should be. As a result,
indeed,
Florida right now is rebuilding every major highway in the state in various places. Route 7.